At Your Excellency's request, I applied for special leave from the Bureau in order to make an investigation in your state. My notes contain all the essential facts. But my injuries make this transcription into a presentable manuscript painfully slow. When finally completed, I will submit the following as a full report on parole conditions which resulted in the release of dangerous criminals who at once returned to their lives of crime. Governor Mallinson?
I'm glad you got here, Mr. Hendricks. Nobody saw you, I hope.
I don't believe so, sir.
Good. Gentlemen, this is Mr. Richard Hendricks. Our host, the State's Attorney General, Mr. Whitmore.
It's a pleasure, sir.
Glad to meet you, Mr. Hendricks.
My name is Hughes.
Mr. Hughes?
Our Commissioner of Metropolitan Police.
Won't you sit over here, Mr. Hendricks?
Thank you.
Let me take your hat. What can I get you?
Oh, a little ginger ale, if you please.
Right.
You know, Hendricks, all this secrecy may seem a little ridiculous to you, but you realize, of course, your identity must not go beyond the three of us in this room. It's only fair to warn you that our two previous investigators fared rather badly. We found one of them with enough lead in him to start a pipe factory. The other simply disappeared.
Well, thanks for warning me. Oh, thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Well, gentlemen, I left Washington in such a hurry that I wasn't given a very complete briefing on your particular problem. But offhand, I would say the trouble is in your parole board.
During the past 6 months, prisoners of such low character have been paroled. I now suspect criminal conspiracy.
Well, do you appoint the parole board, Governor?
Yes, I do.
Well, why not replace them?
You see, those appointments are made for a period of 6 years, and nobody, not even the governor himself, can remove a board member for any reason other than proven malfeasance of office.
I see. That kind of ties things up, doesn't it? Well, gentlemen, I've been figuring how to go about this investigation. Oh, forgive me for pacing, Governor. I think better this way. As I say, I've been figuring how to go about this investigation, and I've come to the conclusion that I must pose as a parole violator. Oh, incidentally, does the name Richard Murdoch sound familiar to you?
Richard Murdoch, he was in that payroll stick-up.
His last job was the Milberg Trust Company holdup.
Oh, yes, I remember now.
Well, Murdoch was paroled and then quietly skipped the country. So quietly, in fact, that not even the grapevine has the information as yet.
And you propose to assume the identity of Murdoch?
That's right. Only I'll call myself Rick Carson, since Murdoch naturally would be using an alias. Now, as Murdoch, alias Rick Carson, I must become friendly with someone who has been through the parole mill in order to find out how his parole was engineered.
Have you anyone in mind?
No, but it should be someone whose parole was obviously bought. I figure that if someone pays for a parole, someone must receive the money.
While you're working undercover as Richard Murdoch or
Rick Carson.
Carson, you'll have to avoid any contact with the police, even in an emergency. Here's my private telephone number, where you can reach me anytime, day or night.
Thank you. Metropolitan 6267. Metropolitan 6267. I'll remember it. Do you have anyone coming up for parole who fits our special requirement?
Certainly is. Convict by the name of Harry Palmer.
Uh-huh. And when is the next parole board meeting?
Let's see. Next Tuesday at the state prison.
Next Tuesday at the state prison.
Let me see. You're now serving time for attempted murder, Palmer. Do you have anything to say about that?
Yeah, it was a phony rap. A lot of things about my trial smelled plenty bad.
So does your police record.
Do you think you've learned your lesson during your time in prison?
I sure have, ma'am. I found out that crime don't pay off. Besides, I realize the things I've done ain't fair to Glenda. She's my wife.
If you are paroled, will you conscientiously try to live a clean and decent life?
Sure. You can bank on that, Reverend.
You think you can earn a living? Honestly, I mean.
You bet. I'm promised a job as chauffeur to Miss Dumont. She owns a pastime club. It's all my application there. If you give me this one more chance, I promise I'll never step off the straight and narrow again.
Why, he isn't sincere. He's merely playing on our sympathies.
All right, Palmer, you may return to your duties. You'll be notified by the warden of the action of this board.
Thank you.
And I feel in my heart that Palmer is sincere. The poor man has never had a fair chance to rebuild his ruined life. Therefore, for the wife's sake as well as his, I favor paroling him.
And what about you, Mr. Jones?
It seems to me that keeping a man behind bars when he can earn a living is a needless waste of taxpayers' money. I vote for his parole.
And your decision, Reverend?
As you well know, I usually bend over backwards to give the misguided unfortunates a chance. But in the case of Harry Palmer, my conscience compels me to oppose his parole.
And your decision, Mr. Perkins?
Palmer deliberately broke the law. Not once, but many times. Freeing a man like Palmer makes a travesty of justice. I am positively against paroling him.
Well, it seems we're evenly divided. 2 for and 2 against Palmer's parole. Consequently, as chairman of this board, it becomes my duty to cast the deciding vote. A decision like this must come from the heart as well as the mind. It must be tempered with humanity and understanding. I watched Palmer when he made his plea, and I'm convinced of his sincerity. In view of this, I must cast my vote with Mrs. Prescott and Mr. Jones in favor of Palmer's parole.
This is an outrage, Holliday. At least a half a dozen times in the past few months you've done the same thing. I just don't understand.
I'm entitled to my vote the same as you, Mr. Perkins. Now, Palmer will have served his minimum sentence on the 22nd of this month. His parole will become effective on that date.
I learned that Palmer's wife, Glenda, was working as a waitress at the pastime club. So I decided to hang around. I'll delete that hang around. So I decided to drop around to the club to look the situation over. The Pastime Club proved to be a not too popular combination gin mill and cheap cafe. A hangout for a lot of undesirable characters.